Hey everybody, it's world famous and your favorite dairy farmer here, Riley Boadwine, back with another episode. Today we're going to be talking about something very important for all living creatures, and it's something that dairy farmers do very little of, but we encourage cows to do as much of as possible. Can you guess what that is? It's sleeping! Sleeping is very important for most metabolic, biological things. And usually we recommend that a human get about 8 hours of sleep. For cows, it's a little bit different. They only need 4 hours of deep sleep per day. But we recommend that they lay down about 12 hours a day, because they can enter a state of quasi-sleep awakeness that we can't quite do. Although sometimes when I'm watching football, I feel like that is kind of what's happening. As you can see kind of over me, most of these cows are laying down in their bed. And this is kind of when they enter that rest period where she can passively chew her cud and stuff like that. But for the most part, she's not super active. But I wouldn't call this sleep. Also, they don't quite have the same biological clock as humans. They don't need to do it at nighttime like we do. Instead, they can kind of do it whenever they feel like it, closing their eyes. A couple myths. Some people say cows can sleep standing up. That is kind of true. They can kind of take a nap while standing up, but they don't enter deep sleep. Can cows sleep without closing their eyes? No. In order to get the real good rapid eye movement sleep, a cow needs to close her eyes and actually lay down. So, just like when you're trying to sleep, the type of bed that you lay on is very important to the quality of your sleep. Now, dairy farmers have over the years been up and down on what is the best bed that a cow can lay on. Some people use rubber mattresses, and others use what we call manure solids, which is little bits of organic matter taken out of manure and then dry. We here at Boadwine Farms, and some experts recommend that you use a sand bedding in your freestall, with a freestall being this area here, which is perfectly sized for the cows to make sure they each get a space. Because if they didn't each get a very specific space, they would kind of start fighting over who gets to be more comfortable, and we don't want that. But anyways, like I said, we use sand bedding because it has the least amount of organic matter in it. And do we know what builds up when you get wet organic matter? Bacteria. And sometimes when a cow is laying in something that can be laden with bacteria, she can get an infection in her udder, which is not what we want. But there are other reasons that sand is probably one of the better bedding choices, mostly because it has a lot of traction and the highest amount of comfortability, so she lays longer, and then when she's getting up and sitting down, we have less chance of her hurting her hock or her hoof, causing lameness, which is a big problem in dairy cattle. Now, one of the reasons that some people would say that sand bedding is not convenient for dairy farming is because when a cow comes up into her bed, in order to get it properly situated, she might kick the sand like this, causing it to go into the alleyway where it mixes with the manure. That sand would usually be lost and not reattainable unless you have some super specific machinery and equipment in order to recover this sand. So if you don't, replacing that sand is going to be expensive, and if you're putting the sand out into a lagoon where it will just build up forever and ever, or out into a field where some guy's not going to want the sandy loam that you just put there, you could have a problem. But we have come up with a solution for this problem. Let's go check it out. So when it comes time for the cows to go to the parlor and get milk, as you can see here, they're just casually walking that direction. That's when we get the opportunity to raise the stalls to get any excess manure out of them, and then push all the manure into the alleyway, down, out, and into this, it's kind of like a giant incline lane, and we call it a flume, because it can send water down, washing the sand and manure to our sand separator room. So remember that word, because we'll get to that in a bit. Here comes the tire scraper. As you can see, he's slowly pushing the manure down with the skid loader, which has kind of a U-shaped squeegee type attachment on the front. And that's where he'll push it down into the flume here, which now you can see it has the running water that I was talking about. which will lead it to the sand separator. Here in a minute, we're going to have the rake come through. Because down here, where the cow lays with her booty towards the back, sometimes that's where manure and urine can pile up, and that is also where the most biological activity would be happening in the sand. We use the rake to rake up that part of the sand in order to get the air moving and get some of that stuff released. And it also kicks a little bit of that extra wet stuff into the manure lane so that it can be pushed into the flume. Okay, so that flume that we were talking about, the little divot in the floor, on both directions of our barn, the water, manure, and sand will lead in through this pit and come up to this, which is a screw auger. And the screw auger is basically a big piece of metal that twists. And it will raise the sand and manure up and then dump it into that, we call it a bastion. And then from there, another screw auger will grab the finer bits of sand and separate them out and send them into a different direction from the larger pieces of sand that we want to collect for the bedding, which will then get taken by that screw auger up to the shaker, which will shake it a whole bunch to shake out a lot of the water. We'll throw a little bit of chlorine at the top, and then we'll get a nice big pile of the usable sand, which we'll store later to get more dry. So like I said before, the more dry, the better for the cow. Let's go take a closer look. Now that is the screw auger that I was talking about. As you can see, it brings up the larger particles while the water draws all the finer stuff away where it falls down this pan and leads back down to the sand lane where it will maybe get cleaned up later. So once the sand comes out of the sand separator, it comes here to our sand drying room. That's a lot of sand, right? Well, this is only a portion of the sand that it takes for us to run our dairy farm for probably a couple months. But anyways, in here, we actually have a heated floor underneath the concrete in order to get more of the liquid to flow out of the sand where it will go downhill into a pipe. That way, almost all of this can be completely dry before we try to put it into the stall. Some of this sand might sit here for 2 or 3 months right now. In the summertime, we can leave it outside where it can probably do a little bit better job of sitting around for a while. But in the winter like this, the sand that still has moisture in it can freeze and become as hard as a rock. And then no one's transporting it anywhere. From that side and that little garage door over there, a guy will come in and he'll fill up a sand wagon, which is not running right now because we put sand in on Tuesdays and Fridays, and it's currently a Sunday. But when it is running, it will shoot sand into the stalls where the cows are in the park. So once everything's gone through the sand separator, the last most important key is that in a couple months here, we will have manure digesters going through here, which will heat up manure to get the methane out, and then that methane will be used as natural gas energy. One big thing about the digesters is they don't really like it when there's a lot of sand in that manure, so we have to be extra careful to make sure we get all of it out. It's a win-win for everybody when we do manure sand separation. So remember, kids, just like you with your schoolwork, these cows, in order to do their work of making milk, have to get the most amount of sleep that they can in order to, properly function. So you go to bed early tonight, just like these cows are going to, and make sure that you're laying in some high-quality bedding. Do not put sand in your beds.